Ross, did you know that female walleye can produce up to 400,000 eggs?
Oh my, 400,000. And so what is some numbers on that? Okay, we got 400,000. How many, I mean, I know on an older one, this is gonna be different too, right? A 20-incher or a 30-incher, this number is gonna be different. How many get to catchable size or to
Sure.
whatever?
So what we have on Lake Erie, and it's really relevant here, is that environmental conditions absolutely dictate that survival. So as you know, and you mentioned it around that 2003 time frame before we got that hatch, we can go years and years without good hatches. So we could have astronomical numbers of eggs laid and have pretty close to functionally zero survival. And then at the same time, you get a year like 2003 where the population was low. On a Lake Erie scale, we probably didn't have that many eggs dropped. And we got one of the biggest year classes we've ever seen out of it because survival was so high due to environmental conditions.
And when you say environmental conditions, I know we've talked about this in the past, and I've talked in seminars and things about it, is there may be a strong correlation, I think it's safe to say, because I know you deal with scientific, like, 1 + 2 type of thing, but there's definitely a correlation in spawning good spawns and having a hard winter, or at least having an ice fishing year. Like when we have an ice year, we tend to have a hatch. 2014 is an example. 2003 is an example.
Yep, absolutely. So what we see is there are a handful of things that put the odds in our favor. And like everything else, there's a timing component. There is an interaction component of these various conditions. But if we get a hard winter, an extended winter, and I'll even add to that late ice out. So it doesn't even necessarily, and this is relevant for 2003, it doesn't need to have been the hardest winter we've ever had. But if that ice is still around in mid to late March and it's just breaking up and it's kind of delaying the spawning, delaying warming water, that's one of the things that gives us the best potential of a big hatch. And the other thing we've seen lately, and this is very comparable to the 1980s, is in 2018 and 2019, what did your ice fishing look like, Ross? I know we're going a few years back, but you didn't have much, right?
It had more than a drink.
Yeah, right. So we went through 2 mild winters, leading up to 2018 and 19 springs, and we got 2 of our biggest hatches ever. So we don't have to have that hard winter.
Well, in 18 though, we did get, because I did fish about a month at the islands. Now the rest of the lake, not so much. But
yep. So I think what the comparison we're seeing to the 80s is high water. We have extremely high water. The predictions are it is going to start dropping a little bit. We've been in a 3, 4, 5 year period now of higher water levels than normal, but most recently record water levels. And that's comparable to the 80s. We had great reproduction in the 80s, lots of year classes, lots of walleye. And it was, now I'm going to say it was a combination of hard winters and high water. And within the last decade, we've seen either. We've seen 14 and 15 be hard winters that gave us big hatches. And we've seen 18 and 19 be relatively mild winters with high water that gave us big hatches.
So this high water, does it just create more spawning areas like in the rivers and the reefs, or how's that? I mean,
so personal opinion, I think what it's doing is it's increasing nursery habitat, and it's leading to a better overlap of plankton blooms and the larval need for food. So when walleye larvae use up their yolk sac, when they need to start feeding, there has to be plankton or they starve to death. I think some combination of more nearshore warm water, more surface area of nursery habitat, probably better plankton blooms with all the nutrients we've been seeing lately. And, we're potentially even current dynamics. You might have different current dynamics at high water that bring larvae into nursery habitat and let more of them survive.